I mean, nor. Board games, it's what we're talking about. Board games, I'm not gonna shout. Board games, I'm not gonna. Oops, sorry, I've got something in another. I have messed up somewhere. I'm very sorry about. This has never happened before. Just give me 2 minutes. I am so sorry about that. Board games, it's what I'm talking about. Board games, I'm not gonna shout. I'm resuming this streaming with a little bit of singing. And over there, joining in antics, is the person known as Shem Phillips. Shell has made some games that are new. Shem has made some games that could be played by you. Board games, is what we're talking about. Board games, I'm not gonna shout. Good morning and hello everyone. I saw before I had to restart, I saw Cheap Sheep Games, Sate, lovely to see you, Paul, and hello Sonia, it's lovely to see you. Thanks for joining me. Chris, and yeah, basically, if anyone wants an explanation, basically I had myself opening in another window. I don't know how that happened. And yeah, I had to basically close everything and then restart everything. So I'm very sorry about that. That is genuinely, there's a first time for every type of problem. And this is what happens when you're doing this. So I am Bez. This is Bedtime Board Game Blether because it is coming up to bedtime for Shem. Like, you know, it's getting towards, where are you and what time is it?
So I'm 12 hours ahead of you in the UK, so it's just after 10 o'clock at night on Monday, I think.
So
over in New Zealand.
You are 10 p.m. on Monday.
Yeah.
Have your clocks changed?
They have, yeah.
Okay, our clocks are going to change in a couple of weeks. And I think then you'll be 13 hours ahead of us, something like that.
Who knows?
But it's all, yeah, crazy. And I think, yeah, anyway, today we're going to be talking about making new things. We're going to be, I had you on because, you know, you've done so many games. You've worked on games in the North Sea, you've worked on games in the West Kingdom. You're obviously going to work south and east, like you're working through this 12-game series, which, you know, is a crazy thing to undertake. But, you know, obviously it didn't start off there. It started off, I guess, with, you know, yeah, well, like people building monuments in France, I guess. And then you said, okay, that's the West Kingdom. No, wait, it started in the North Sea, sorry.
Yeah, it started in the North Sea with the shipwrights. So that just started out as just one game that sat on my shelf for probably 2 years because I knew I didn't have the kind of resources to make the game. So when Kickstarter came to New Zealand, I was like, I can finally make this game I've had on my shelf for at least a year or two. Didn't have any ambitions for a trilogy, just made a game, and then people wanted another game. So I thought, I'll make another one, and then let's just make a trilogy. And now I just have no self-control and I keep making more games. So, you know.
Paul suggests turn your audio off and on again. I don't know if that would make any difference. And Chris even wants some representations of Northwest and Southeast, but that seems like a bit overcomplicated and extending it for the sake of it. But yeah, basically, Shem, in your own bio, you said that you are all about trying to make new things. You want to have your games be novel, you want to have your games be beautiful. And so that's why you're talking about keeping your games fresh. And that's what we're talking about. So I thought we'd chat a little bit about who you are, get to know you, ask you some silly questions, chat about some brilliant things, as we always do. And then in about half an hour, we'll start actually getting into the main topic.
Sounds good. I've reset my mic, so
That sounds actually so much better. That was good advice from Paul. Thank you very much, Paul. Yeah, turn it off and on again. Why did neither of us think of that? Anyway, so brilliant things, brilliant things. What's a little thing which is brilliant?
Something brilliant. I think this thing I showed you before is probably my most brilliant thing. I think I got it off some cheap kind of website. Don't know how it was. It's meant to be a flower pot, but I use it for my pen holder. So this is a Groot. So yeah.
And that's almost like a shout out to Xates there.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry about this, Shen. Could you turn yourself up a tiny bit now?
All right. Is that better now?
Okay, blah, everyone blah. In the comments is. So tell us how we are, and also why are pencil holders brilliant?
Well, there's a very obvious reason for that. Is that they hold pencils. So otherwise, I'd be holding them all day long, wouldn't I? So
you could have them on your table. I mean, you could have them horizontally.
A little pocket. Yeah, you could do. Yeah.
But yeah. And yeah, sorry, I think we're just this is going to be the way it is. But thank you, everyone. Let us know if you have any things.
I can change my mic. We'll try that, eh? So I'm using like a... Where we go? Into the settings.
No, not horizontally, says Maya. Hello, Maya. I mean, what's wrong with putting your...
Hello. Is that one better, maybe? Is that mic better?
This sounds very different. I'm just getting used to how deep your voice is suddenly gone.
Oh, really? Maybe
this is like your kind of James Brown voice.
Maybe I can mix the two together.
No, it's good. It's good. It's good.
It's good now? All right.
Yeah. Someone says turned up a tiny bit. I hear you quite well, but
that might be tricky.
Sorry about that. So this is the new feature for the show, tech support. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. So we've decided that pencils we cannot bear to have them horizontally. We want to have their own special place. We don't want to keep them just scattered around the table. I mean, if you did not have a pencil holder, do you think, are you a chaotic person, Shem? Would you just
I'm not chaotic at all. I have to have things in their place. Yeah.
Man, I wish I was a bit more like that. So let's talk about some recent highlights, living life and seeing the sights. Recent highlights, living life and other delights. Recent highlights. So yeah, what games have you been playing? What have you done that you've been proud of or that you've particularly enjoyed? Let us know.
Gosh, I've been kind of diving back into some more lighter games recently. I think just because we've been designing some heavier stuff. The room behind Shem does not look, it's not chaotic at all. But some games, every time people ask me what you've been playing, I have to look at the shelf. Santa Monica and Coatl, and we played Raids on Thursday night.
Nice.
We got to play Feudum with the big nice playmat. So I'm looking forward to playing that again with all the expansions thrown in. So yeah, but lots of play testing as well, obviously.
So what are you currently working on? Is it the next trilogy, start of the next trilogy? Are there quite a few other games?
Yeah, next year we've got planned 3 expansions for West Kingdom. So we don't want to like jump onto the next trilogy straight away. And we've got a follow-up game to Circadians, which is our kind of sci-fi games. So Sam McDonald's been designing a big kind of asymmetric dudes on a map style game, which I don't usually like this kind of games, but it's lighter games like Feudum. No, it's not a light game. So we've got expansions, a few little projects coming out, and we'll plan the first South game for 2022, I guess. So we have started designing that now, even though we said we wouldn't. We have. So
you wish you wouldn't? Why do you wish that?
I don't wish we didn't. We just said that we wouldn't. We just said like, oh, we'll just leave it for a year. Let's just like focus on other stuff. And then Sam's like, so I've got this idea for the first game. So, and now it's already going quite well.
I mean, surely that's a good thing when you're so excited by the thing that you just can't help yourself from making the thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. We love what we do. So,
Paul says, you're working on Furniture Makers of Clumpton.
You've been reading my designer notes.
Oh, yeah. This is like, I don't know why Paul's constantly trying to get other people to make games about Clumpton now, it sounds like. Anyway, anyone in the chat, feel free to share what you have been enjoying recently. I'm going to quickly say that I had a quick run this morning. I had a bit of a walk. I've been enjoying some podcasts. I chatted on the phone to my friend, who I'll call W, because that's their initial, but I don't know if everyone wants to be identified. But, I want to say that, I've got more than one friend. It's not always the same friend. But, I do have, sometimes keep in touch with the same friends. But anyway, so W and I hadn't chatted it was a friend and I who hadn't chatted for years, and then they were thinking of moving. They got in touch and we just ended up chatting for an hour and a half, and it was such a lovely thing. And I've really enjoyed recently talking on the phone whilst wandering around. What's your favorite method of communication, would you say, out of curiosity? Actually, I feel like we get jumping ahead.
No, I do miss a good phone call. Like, it's been a while since I had a really good phone call. I'm more of like a small group kind of person. I love just having 2 or 3 friends in a room, and chatting for hours. So, yeah, that's probably my preferred one.
And Paul says they played 4 games of Project L on Friday, 2 games of Stickham, but was working all weekend and at work did not involve gaming. Alex says, sure, you have more than one friend. Sure you do. Yeah. Chris says they're going to see about volunteering to help instruct at the Sea Cadets this evening. Chris was a cadet there 25 years ago. Going to be great, going back after so long. And Maya says, found their first game. My first game design notes ever, I think, and are funny and unorganized, but there's some good and interesting things there. And we played Crew. And Alex was an Air Cadet and a Sea Scout. So let's get into these questionably quick questions. We've already asked where you're from. You're from Wellington, right?
Yeah, just north of Wellington, a little town called Waikanae. A coastal town.
And would you rather have a meeple-sized duck or a duck-sized meeple?
Probably a duck-sized meeple, I think.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So
you're not a duck.
You don't want to take care of other animals.
Especially not a very small duck.
No.
Would
you like to take care of a larger animal? I mean, if it was a horse-sized duck.
A horse-sized duck? That sounds dangerous.
Did you ever have any pets?
Yeah, we had a dog and a cat growing up, and a few tropical fish. If I had an animal, I'd have a dog, I think. Yeah.
I mean, what puts you off of pets? Is it basically the poo? Is it the time?
It's the fur, I think, usually. Like, just I've got friends who have cats and dogs, and you go to their house and you sit down in your black jeans, and when you stand up, you've just got fur all down your back of your legs, you know. And then the smell of them as well. Yeah. Or hair. They have hair, don't they? Not fur. But yeah.
No, I think I'd call that fur. Like just shedding everywhere I can, get what you're on about. Now, what time do you normally wake up?
Usually 6 o'clock or so. Sometimes earlier. Doesn't mean I get up, but I wake up at least. Yeah. I'm usually like I used to work at McDonald's when I was younger, so I was on the morning shifts. So I haven't broken that habit of waking up at like 5:30, 6 o'clock. So get a lot of work done before 10 o'clock in the morning.
Wow. I mean, my day basically. Some days I basically start at like. Honestly, it's an effort for me to get up for this time. If I did not have this thing where I know that everyone's kind of tuning in at a specific time and I need to be here, like I would just be rolling out of bed maybe 9 o'clock and then. So I want to hear a bit more about a typical day. Let's jump ahead slightly to that question. Just tell us about a typical day recently.
So most of my days are wake up 6-ish, get up 6:30, 7 o'clock, get kids breakfast while I try and get ready for school on time. And we've got a little 8-month-old now as well, so he's getting fed and screaming and yelling and all that fun stuff. I'm usually doing emails, I'm sorting out questions and processing orders, all that stuff. And then 8:30-ish, I might drop the kids off, or my wife might drop the kids off, and then either or we're looking after our young boy as well. And then just if there's work that day, I'll usually start doing that work. If it's like graphic design work, or it might be some play testing, or Sam McDonald might come over from where he lives and work on some games, play some games. I mean, today was just basically do that till about 10 and then play Assassin's Creed for like 6 hours. So yeah, that was a busy day.
I mean, how much sleep do you get tonight?
Probably like 6 hours, maybe.
Like
I wake up a lot during the night.
That doesn't sound like enough to me. Okay, we've got some questions from the comments, and feel free to ask us anything in the comments, obviously. Cheap Sheep Games asks, how much time do you spend on Board Game Geek?
It's always open. So I have on Google Chrome, I have a little like folder where I just open everything. It's called Quick Tabs. So it's like, bam, there's Twitter, Instagram, BGG, Facebook. So usually I'm just sort of cycling between those tabs on and off throughout the day. So I'm on there quite a bit, really. As long as I'm on my computer, then I'm basically on BGG. Checking it at least every half an hour, I guess.
And just a quick hello to Prey. It's lovely to have you join us. What is the last thing you ate today?
What did I just eat? My memory's really good, by the way.
So you can't remember what you had
ice
for
cream.
dinner?
I had ice cream. That's what I had.
Yeah. What kind of ice cream? We want more details, especially Paul.
I think it was chocolate caramel and something like that. It was dark, so I couldn't quite see it, but it was good. Chocolate eclair, I think it might have been. Yeah.
What brand was this? This sounds like a fancy ice cream.
No, it was some cheap local New Zealand brand, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Iced coffee or hot tea?
Neither.
What
Chocolate
would you
milk.
drink? Chocolate milk. Okay. What would you drink if you're playing a board game?
Probably water.
Do you ever snack whilst playing board games?
Yeah, we do. Our Thursday night group, we don't eat that much food while we play. Maybe a block of chocolate might get passed around or some chippies, but no. I should be saying we eat duck, shouldn't I? We eat meeple-sized ducks. Yeah.
Nah, you don't need to lie about anything. What would you choose between cards or cubes? And just to clarify,
Cards.
cubes include dice.
Always cards.
Wooden meeple or plastic figurine?
Wooden meeple.
Art or rules?
Why not both, I'd say.
I'll allow it. Favorite localist board game shop?
Oh, well, I'd have to probably say my local shop, which is called Calico Keep. And in Wellington City, we have Cerberus Games. And we've also got a bunch of like cafes in Wellington, which I know them well and I love them. So we've got Counterculture and we've got Caffeinated Dragon, all in Wellington City. So lots of cool shops.
Now, I'd like to ask you a little bit about how you got started. So I listened to a few shows that you've done elsewhere. You talked about how 12 years ago you were working on this game. It was pretty much a roll and move game. And then you went to a local convention. I assume it was WellyCon.
Yep.
And then you were introduced to all these games. Now, can you talk about that experience of being exposed to all these games for the first time?
Oh man,
sorry, I'm asking you to reach back into your memory.
Yeah. My memory. You're going past one day. This is getting tough. No, it was. I think I was just so excited to like find all these games that I could just love and dive into and experience, because my experience before that was just the classics of like Cluedo and Monopoly and Scrabble and card games. So discovering these games with like really great artwork, like Citadels and stuff, where it's like, wow, these are character cards and and pretty icons and cool fun gameplay. So, and then just because what happened, I think, was I got a friend showed me Catan. I rushed out and just went to Toy World, which is our local toy shop, and just saw, I think it was Family Business and Carcassonne, and just bought them based on the artwork because I was like, it looks like Catan kind of. So I grabbed them, and then just kept buying games ever since. So, yeah.
With that initial roll and move, I know that you wouldn't want to publish it now, given that there's all these better games. But can you tell us about how the game works? What was it all about?
I had this silly catchphrase of like, it's the board game without a board. That's how much I knew about the board game scene. So it was just a tile laying, roll and move, exploration kind of set collecting game. So my girls still like playing it for some reason. I hate it, but they like playing it. So it's got the fun discovery element of like you're making a map. So if you like my game Explorers kind of has that same vibe. You like, and Carcassonne and stuff. You're building this map and it's aesthetically quite pleasing to look at when you finish the game. So I think the kids liked it for that reason. I used to go to local kind of what would you call them, like fairs or sort of trade show type things, like local meets. Oh, they're called swap meets, I think they're called. And like show off my game back then when I was like early 20s, and you'd get like 5 and 6 year old kids like, wow, a game, and they'd love it. So that was the target audience, was like, kids thought it was cool. So, and then I realized that it was really luck based and not fun to play. So,
I mean, it's an interesting thing because people do play games for so many reasons, and LCR, I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's 0 decisions. You roll these dice, and if it's oh my god, it's so bad. Sorry, if it says L, you give a chip to the left. If it says R, you give a chip to the right. And there's like one other rule, I can't remember what it is, but basically, eventually, someone's got all the chips. That's basically, and that's it. And then you keep on playing for potentially hours, and it's something that people just do as an excuse to spend time together. But there is some value in that. But what you've been focusing on, even though Garphill Games, I think 2015, like I looked up, there was like this 20-40 minutes game that sorry, need to get these windows back up in a minute to show the images. But you started off making lighter games before settling on what you see as these medium weight, 90-minute strategic games where you're making decisions, and it's a network of rules, you might say, like what Richard Garfield describes as ortho games. You're making strategic choices, and then at the end, there's some ranking. Do you have any desire to play any other games, whether it's story games or games of luck or gambling or betting?
As long as I can appreciate some level of design in the game, I can enjoy it. If I get asked to play Snakes and Ladders by my kids, I'm usually just like, I don't care, because it's completely luck based. You know, it's fine if they already know how to count, so they don't need to count higher than 6. Yeah, they can count higher than 6 already, so it's not going to help them with counting. But we've been playing like Dragomino, and they play Tick to Ride for the kids. That's like far more fun because even an adult can see there's nice design in here, there's choices to be made and stuff like that. Yeah. But I still enjoy other types of games other than Euros for sure. Yeah.
And what would you say are free games that you love? Free games you didn't design that you love, and why?
I'll try and make them very different, eh? I love Love Letter because is it 16 cards, I think? It's just such an elegant design for so few cards. I love, let's go with Underwater Cities with the expansion thrown in, just because it's a game that I would have published. So, yes, I appreciate like so much of the design elements in that game. And I really enjoy playing Lord of the Rings Journeys through Middle Earth, whatever it's called. I like playing it solo, two-handed. So those are 3 very different games that I like playing.
Ooh, and hello, Dina, to join us, and it is lovely to see you, of course. Moving on to the shipwrights of the North Sea. Yeah, what was the original inspiration for Shipwrights of the North Sea?
From memory, I think I was playing a lot of Citadels at that time. I had it was during the time where basically all my friends were discovering board games, so we would just would thrash one game for weeks on end every weekend. The good old days. So my idea was what if with Citadels you've got a separate deck of character cards and you've got your building cards, and I just thought, what if you threw all those cards into one deck and you draft all of them? So I'd never played any other drafting games before. And my kind of idea was I want to make a game about building ships because that's, other than Le Havre, I hadn't really seen a game that kind of focused on building ships at all. And that was even quite minor in that game. And I just wanted to have a game that had 3 resources. And when I did some research, I discovered that Viking longships were predominantly made of oak, wool, and iron. So I was like, oh, that's good. They're simple ships. And I discovered there was about 15 different types of longships. And then, of course, I realized there's barbarians and berserkers and shield maidens and all these cool kind of character classes character titles that I thought this is going to be a real fun theme. And that's basically how I got started on that one. And then when I had the chance to actually finally do it on Kickstarter, because I had no money, I thought, oh, let's just try this. Maybe my last game I'll ever put up on. I was kind of done making games. This is a good time to finish. Maybe make one last game, and hire a really good artist to make it look really pretty. And then, based on the feedback and the attention I got from that game, I was like, oh, actually, people still want to play my games. This is interesting. So I kind of kept going. That would have been, I guess, 6 or 7 years ago now, I suppose.
I mean, for sure, if you look at the number of ratings on the games, so in chronological order, I don't know if you how often you look at how often do you look at the comments for your own games? Are you addicted to that? It's if
I subscribe to all my games, so someone comments or forum post, I see it.
But comments, I'm subscribed to all my games, but I only get notifications if someone actually posts in the forum or something like that. But
I have a list on the what's it called, the quick bar. So you have I've just 10 games bookmarked there, and so we're Architects, Paladins, Viscounts, Tome Saga, and Age of Azores, which is all West Kingdom stuff. I've got Circadians, expansion that's coming up for Paladins. Razor Scythia, and Hadrian's Zor and Shelfie Stacker. So it's like my most recent games. And those quick links I have go to the most recent comments. So I get to see what people, especially when a game's coming out, like Viscounts is just coming out very soon. I want to see what the initial kind of feedback is from people. Because it's really important to kind of get not just the final kind of overall opinion from people, but those first impressions are really important to kind of to filter and say, oh, okay, so I guess you might get opinions like, oh, it's a bit clunky or it's a bit hard, the rules aren't that great or whatever. That's the stuff you kind of want to hear, because then okay, that maybe the game wasn't as polished as it could have been, or maybe we could make sure we don't do that again in the next game. Whereas when you're kind of the game's been out for a year, everyone's learnt the game, and those things don't pop up as much because everyone's been taught by their friends who already know the game. So little things like that, yeah.
Well, quick bye to Paul, and Chris gives a big up to there's some cool Viking longships on the Isle of Man. Maybe Chris says that I need to adjust the subscription because the default settings are different to the other settings. But anyway, my point was that if you look at the number of ratings, which isn't purely a direct representation of how well it sold, but it gives some indication. And so Linwood, 87 ratings, Capek, 22, 56, 54, 16, 7, 13, 11, 1.3 thousand,
yeah,
5.
There's the jump.
And then, when we go to the next thing, it's like, obviously these are just promos, but then Raiders, it goes to 14,000, and like, you've got this other game that you self-published, Flee the Scene. So at this point, you're still making other games. You did a bunch of artwork even for your own games, which I find really interesting.
Just graphic design, not actual artwork.
Okay, because you are listed as an artist on BGG. So I was going to ask you, like, can you tell us exactly how much you did?
I failed art in school, so I cannot draw to save my life. But I can use a mouse and a clicker and, make icons.
And do you think that at what points did you feel like, okay, this is what we are making? We are making these 90-minute, more strategic games, as opposed to,
It would have been at the end of the Viking trilogy, moving into West Kingdom. That's when I probably thought, because up to that point, I'd almost published everything that I designed at that point. I'd just like make a game, let's publish it, And all those early games I made, I was just like cutting the cards, not like manually with a die cutter, putting stickers on boxes, printing really small print runs here in New Zealand. Had a few customs overseas, but it was mainly very local. Because it was just a hobby. I just like making games, and no ambitions to make a job out of it. And then so Flee the Scene was one I actually designed probably maybe even before Shipwrights, but I went through so many different iterations, and then finally I was like, actually I might make this. I just stripped it right down to a bare minimum, really simple pick up and deliver with basically just cards and a few tokens. There's not really much else in the game, so it's more of a family style game. But it would have been sort of around the time of Architects, when Sam McDonald came on board. That's when I would have started to think about what is the Garphill brand, what are we getting known for, and now we may have seen I had a game picked up by Z-Man a couple of years ago, Noctiluca. I had Shelfie Stacker was getting published by Arcus Games. So these are like games I've designed that I know don't fit my brand. So I'm just being a bit smarter of like, I as a designer like making lots of different types of games, but I know that Garphill Games is kind of creating its own image and its own brand, and so we are targeting more of that kind of midweight Euro style games with good artwork.
I mean, it feels like obviously you've got these 12 core games. I mean, obviously a lot of them have yet to be designed, but you start off with the blue and then the red and then the yellow, and then you've not said, to my knowledge, what the final color is going to be, but maybe it's green, maybe it's pink, I don't know. Like
Probably
any
greenish black,
green?
foresty kind of colours.
I
Yeah.
was thinking either black or green.
Yeah, probably something like a bit of a mix, I think. Yeah.
Hmm.
Forest colours.
And yeah, it feels like after that, you're going to be like, okay, what do
Now
I
what?
make next?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Oh no, what do I do now? We kind of throw around this joke of making a big game at the end that has all 4 kingdoms, like in a big dudes on the map game. I say it's a joke, and then Sam's like, "Is it actually a joke? I thought it was actually going to happen." So,
Which Sam is this?
yeah.
Is this
Sam
your
McDonald. So yeah,
Sam
and
McDonald?
there's too many Sams in my life, but yeah, yeah.
Okay, Cheap Sheep Games asks, which game mechanism do you like the most and why?
My favorite mechanism is multi-use cards, and that's because they're awesome, and you can do so many things with them. You can be so creative, and like I love giving even just multi-use components. I love so having things that do more than one thing in a game. It just makes things intuitive.
And it just
and
offers you
it's fun.
options and it
Yeah.
allows you more scope for strategy, right?
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Man, like I want to get a little bit more into your background because I want to ask you about this album that I had in a link, but I need to find again.
Don't go sharing that stuff.
Don't go sharing it. Come on, it's right on your. No, it's right. It's
I'll be
right.
on Kickstarter, wouldn't it? Yeah.
It is right there on the Kickstarter. So Sam was doing drums. You were playing guitar.
Yep.
How long ago was this? How is the band going?
No, I think it was 5 years ago. I think we're actually going to do a little one-off show in 2 months' time, which will be interesting. Just like a reunion. Some of our other
Aw.
friends from another band want to do a reunion show, so we're like, yeah, why not? So it'll be interesting. I've sold all my gear, so I have to borrow some guitar pedals. But yeah, I've been writing and playing music since I was about 14. So it's a very similar skill set to making games. So I think that's why Sam McDonald's also very much into it, because we just both love creating stuff, and we're not very good musicians. So, well, Sam's a good musician. I'm not a very good musician. So we found that we're better at making games than making music.
So that's a younger version of you.
It's a younger, skinnier, less beardy version of myself. Yeah.
And can you talk us through these 4 people very quickly?
Yeah, so on the left, I guess standing next to me, that's in the middle is Sam. On my other side is my mate Matt. Matt used to work with me at a printing shop. He actually did a lot of the original playtesting for my games. So like especially Raiders and Explorers. We used to play it a lot in the afternoons at work when we weren't busy. And then on the other side is my mate Blake, who's a really good lifelong friend. He does a lot of the voiceovers for our videos on Kickstarter. So these are like my brothers that, like, even though our band's not together, we're still a band in a way, you know. So really good friends, real creative. I was kind of like band dad. I was always the serious one, making sure people were getting up in the morning for tour and making things on time. Blake was always band mum, making sure everyone was kind of feeling okay and everyone's happy and everyone's, relationships are good. And then Sam and Matt were just like the kids, just annoying and loud, and yeah, that was a good fun.
And hi, Lawrence. It's lovely to see you. Who says took them a moment to recognise? Don't know. Have you met Lawrence from Wotan Games?
I don't think so.
Okay. So yeah, but do you actually travel much outside of New Zealand?
Not this year. I've been to Essen twice and Gen Con once, and went to Berlin for the Spiel des Jahres award ceremony thing.
Of course you would. I mean,
yeah, I've been to
and
other countries.
congratulations
Yeah.
in like several years too late for the Kennerspiel nominee.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I enjoy traveling, but it's exhausting, and it's like from New Zealand, if I want to go to the Europe, it's like a 2-day journey to get there. So, yeah, it's fun when you're there, but it's the jet lag's a killer. I usually sleep for a day when I get home. Yeah.
And so, yeah, it feels like Sam Phillips, your brother,
Yep.
Have you got only one sibling? I think you said.
Yep.
And so Sam has done some art, but now you've got. Oh, can you remind me of the Northwest artist? Yeah,
Micho.
Micho.
Yep.
Sorry about that. Oh,
Or he.
like it's. Oh, it's Micho. Okay, and yeah. So this is them on the Board Game Geek. That's them apparently.
He's
Just
also
to
got
clarify.
a much bigger beard now too. So.
Okay. Anyway, so with Dimitro, they're bringing they elevated these games, and you've talked about how you kind of need the art to kind of get people to recognize them, how you wanted to elevate it. And I saw a thing on Board Game Geek where 10 years ago you were saying, hey, I want to print 100 copies of this game, and that's going to be it. So someone says, hey, have you checked out Kickstarter? To which you responded, hey, this looks lovely, but people in New Zealand aren't allowed to use it yet.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, you didn't say yet. You just said people in New Zealand aren't allowed to use it. And so what do you contribute your success to? Like, do you contribute Kickstarter with a lot of your success?
Yeah, definitely. I had a weird moment on when I was working towards the Kickstarter campaign. I had a weird moment where I uploaded the shipwrights player board to BGG, and it just so happened on that day that all the images on the kind of the hotness disappeared, and there's just my one picture sitting there by itself. So people saw it. Yeah, so it's a weird moment. But
so it sounds like there was like this weird glitch that somehow really massively benefited you.
I'm not a computer hacker, just saying it just happened. But yeah, and then I think it's just the fact that no one had ever seen the Micho's artwork in board games before, so that was a big part of it too. I often say to him, like I always say, like, man, I'm so grateful to work with you, and they're like, no, thank you. So we've got this very mutual kind of thing. We've kind of helped each other out quite a bit to get out there and get more exposure, as they call it, as a creative person. So yeah, definitely his artwork's been the biggest driving force to like us being noticed, I think. And I mean, I would say that like the fact that our games aren't completely terrible is mean that we can keep doing what we're doing. If our games sucked, then his artwork wouldn't save them. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, and all this talk about the series, that's something we'll get into, and it's been really interesting delving into this. I just want to ask a little bit about the relationship between you and your brother, because Sam Phillips has done artwork in the past. Now they've kind of been superseded by Dimitro. That sounds an unkind way to put it, but hopefully Sam wouldn't mind too much me saying that. Yeah, it's like, how involved is Sam in your games, and is there anyone that you would like to give thanks to? Like, just a quick 1 or 2 minutes.
So when I was starting out, because it's just a hobby, I was like, I've got to make a game. I have to get some kind of artwork done at least. So I just asked my brother to do stuff for me. And he was like, oh, okay, I guess I'll have to, reluctantly help you, my little brother. So he'd helped me with a few icons and things like that for my early games, because there wasn't much art in my early games at all. And then he started getting more into tattoo art, doing custom tattoo designs for people around the world. So his kind of following and his artwork really started to take off. And then we both ended up working at this t-shirt printing place. So his full-time job at that point was as the kind of in-house designer, and still doing custom tattoo designs for people, designing clothing labels and things like that. And I was doing all the printing and running the business. And then after 6 years of that, I took the leap and jumped out and did full-time for Garphill. And then my brother stayed there for another year, and he was basically doing my job, and he just did not like my job. So I saw an opportunity, like, I could probably hire my brother now to do a couple of games with a new kind of graphic design style, new visual look, because he'd really developed his style over the last sort of 8 years at that point. So that's how it all kind of worked out. So it's been really good. He works from home, I work from home, and yeah, and Sam McDonald obviously works. He's about a 45-minute drive from me, so it's quite fun just doing this with your friends, and my brother. So.
Now, I think that I wanted to ask all of this just to get some basic sense of setting, of history. Garphill Games, you explain it's based on Gary Phillips, your dad.
Yep.
It's a tribute to your dad, who I understand passed away shortly before you set up the company.
He died when I was 13, actually. My brother was 15.
Oh, I'm
yeah.
sorry to.
Oh no, that's fine. Yeah, so it's we got a when I think I was about 21 maybe. My dad's dad died, so a small inheritance got passed down to his sons, of which my dad wasn't no longer there. So his inheritance got passed to me and my brother. Wasn't much, but I took that little bit of money and decided I'd make my first game using that. So that's kind of why I attributed the company name to him as a bit of an honor. And the bird in our logo is actually a robin, which is my mum's middle name. So keep it in the family, yeah, because they kind of really brought me up on games, and and that's what games for me. That's what games are about. It's friends and family, and spending time together.
Well, thank you very much. That's been brilliant. And now we're going to move on to the more on-topic parts of the show, where we're going to talk about making new things, what that means, why we're doing it, and then we're going to go into some things that inspire newness. And as always, in the comments, if you've got your own side chat, I love that. I won't necessarily show it on screen, but I love when there's conversations going on. Feel free to ask questions from follow, but obviously now we're going to have slightly more on-topic questions. So yeah, we're basically talking about novelty, right? Making new things, kind of keeping it fresh. Do you want to elaborate on what we're talking about?
Yes, so we were talking about a bit before off air about how it's about get that balance of doing something new but not so out there that no one can understand it and can comprehend, and it's kind of too crazy. So it's fun as a balance of bringing something fresh to the table that people go, oh, that's different, that's new, I haven't played that before, but also making it so they can still kind of feel familiar or at home at least while playing the game. And that's kind of what we do. We try and find that balance, especially we keep that familiarity a lot with our visual look, so the iconography and stuff, but also if you're going to have a game that's got a very novel, say, worker placement mechanism, you might have some simple set collection or some simple card play that people understand, so that they don't have to relearn the entire game. Some things, especially for experienced board gamers, lots of the game will still just make sense, but there's that extra kind of twist that they can enjoy something different out of it.
Yeah, I think you're right on point, about having this. I know Mark Rosewater, from the perspective of communications theory, talks about comfort, surprise, and completion. And two of those are things that you kind of are expecting, but you need to have that surprise in there wherever it comes from. Do you think there's a way to measure innovation or novelty? Could you look at a game and say, okay, this game has more innovation than that? Or is it just a vague, subjective kind of, oh, I know it when I see it, hand-wavy thing?
The funny thing is, it's all about your personal experience, right? So you might think it's innovative, but you didn't play the game that it was inspired by. So yeah, I don't know. I think there's not to be said about games that don't do anything new, but that still do a really good thing. There's a bunch of games that I can think of that don't necessarily bring anything new to the table, but the way they've brought these concepts together works better than it's ever worked together in the past. So yeah, at the end of the day, it's make a great game. That's kind of the goal. But I personally, I don't like skinning stuff. I don't like copying stuff. I did just release Razor Scythia, which is kind of like a second version of Raiders of North Sea. But what I mean is, I don't want to just do another Lords of Waterdeep or just another, whatever else. You want to do something that stands by itself, which is a challenge, but it's a good challenge to have.
think that what you talk about, it's coming from personal experience, is so true. And I think it was, when was, yeah, it was like just under a week ago when I talked to Mandela about the value of familiarity. So it's kind of interesting how now we're going the other way. And what Mandela talked about was how it's your personal experience, it's sharing that with someone else. And if, look, there's some games, I'm not going to name names, where you say, okay, this comes from this thing that came 10 years prior, but no one had done anything with that mechanism. Okay, they have done it in a better way, but most people didn't know about that game 10 years before. Certainly, I mean, how is that novelty, or does it need to, yeah, I'm asking you to kind of get more into the definition, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think I strive to be novel or strive to be innovative. I just want to make really great games. And when you stumble upon a mechanism that you think feels fresh, then that's quite exciting because it inspires the game more. And so yeah, that's probably me as a designer personally. I don't think all designers would have that. I think most of us just want to make a great game, you know. And if you discover something fresh, that's just an added bonus on top of that. But there's so many good games out there that are just not overly innovative. You know? And we have awards, like I think the Dice Day have awards for innovation, which kind of suggests that not all games do have innovation. If there's an award for it, you know.
I mean, it's definitely true that something like The Mind was like quite, in a way, like a lot of party games. I mean, sure, there's some that, you know, Hive Mind, and there's like been a recent game which is very much, and it looks very similar to Hive Mind by Richard Garfield. I don't know if you know that party game.
No, I'm not sure.
Well, basically, everyone's sort of, it might be okay, write down 5 insects, and everyone writes down 5 insects, and you get points for being the same as other people. And so maybe you write down spider, you might know that spider is not an insect. Everyone who writes spider might know that it's technically not an insect, but that's not the point. It's because you're trying to write what other people would think of, to get what I mean. And then, like, there's been a recent game which kind of took that and repackaged it. Yeah, so getting rid of that banner, like, it sounds like you're like, yeah, sure, those games can still be great games. I mean, I'm not asking you to comment on that particular game, which you've never heard of until right now, but, you know, in general, like, when you've got something where it's evolution, do you think that evolution can be as valuable as novelty?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when it comes down to it, war games are just art, really, you know, that we can appreciate and enjoy. So if you can still enjoy it without innovation, not everything needs innovation, and even in any area of life, but it keeps things fresh, especially for people who play a lot of games, I guess. So that most people don't play tons of games, but I'm guessing a lot of people that are watching this show probably do play lots and lots of games. So innovation we appreciate because it's like it's something fresh that kind of stands out for us. Yeah.
And maybe innovation is more important for those who play lots of games. And as you said, it's about how innovative is it based on your target audience's experience. And maybe that's what it comes down to, looking at your target audience and saying how different is it from what your target audience has experienced. Because if you're looking at people who are into, you know, 90-minute games, they're likely to play quite a bunch of them. Whereas if it's something like Hive Mind or Scattergories, for example, then maybe it's okay, it's not as a big deal.
Yeah,
I mean,
I agree with that. Yeah.
As a player, how important is innovation to you, would you say?
I don't think it's important to me, but I find it inspiring. from a design point of view. Yeah. So, I mean, like Everdell, yeah. I love that game. It's such
One
a good
with
game.
the tree.
Yeah, it's such a good game. But if you break it down, there's not too much fresh going on in there really. But it's still a really good game. So because the way they've brought everything together. So, and I can still appreciate a lot of the design that went into that game as well, because even though it's not necessarily innovative, it's still very well designed, and doesn't feel like it's just skinning something else either. So yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, it's very hard to make something completely new without breaking the rules of what it takes to make a board game, really.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, what is the good parts of innovation? Like, we've talked about having like the surprise, and we've talked about you saying that it's inspiring to you as a player, and it's obviously something like the mind. You know, it's like, whoa, I've never seen something like this before, where it's basically all about the downtime. It's about how long are you willing to wait before putting down a thing. Or frankly, wavelength, it's fairly innovative what's going on there. And how that maybe draws people to a game. Are there any other ways that it can be good?
Yeah, it definitely creates that talking point, I suppose. Like, have you played the game where you sit there in silence and wait for someone to plays a card? Like, it's a new experience that people can talk about, and that's probably the biggest part. It's basically like a hook for the game when it comes to marketing. Like, it's the thing that makes it stand out. And there's so many games being released. As publishers, we kind of have to make them stand out. Sometimes it's by artwork, sometimes it's by a very unique theme or the components, but I think for us especially to stand out, when we've basically built the brand of the image that you recognize our games, but to keep people interested in the games, we have to keep innovating. So we're like, as an example, for the South trilogy, we're going to focus a lot on dice, just to make that kind of make that trilogy stand apart from the other trilogies, because they don't really use dice much. Raiders does a little bit, but not much. So we're now looking at like, how can we use dice in a new way. So that's kind of our focus for creating these new games. Yeah, so it's a focus for us, but that's because we don't want to kind of make our games just get dry and boring and repetitive. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And hello, Scott, and I'll be getting to all the questions in just a moment. Like, I thought we could get a little bit into the pitfalls. Like, we've already talked about the balance of some elements of comfort. Like, before the show started, we were talking about a game in which you don't roll the die, but you need to flip it in between different squares, and maybe you draw cards from the bottom of the deck for some reason. And like, if you have a whole bunch of things that people look, all of these things have been done before. We have had games where you can't really reorder your cards. Like, I mean, obviously, Bonanza. Oh yeah, the other way around. Maybe it's both. Maybe it's a mixture of not seeing your own cards and you can't reorder your own cards. And you've got to die that you're basically flipping around. Maybe you're using these cards to kind of get the die to a certain point, but it's kind of cooperative, and there's also a trader mechanism, a traitor mechanism, and maybe like in this game, the traitor actually moves around. So you are the traitor only for a small portion of the game. I don't think that's ever been done before. I think that's genuinely innovative. But that sounds like a mess of a game, frankly. I don't know what you think of this pitch.
Oh, sounds great. Yeah.
Seriously? Come on, you can't tell me it's terrible. I only spent like the last 30 seconds thinking of it.
Oh, that's a lot of work. Yeah, I think one of the risks can be, like you said, it can go too far and not be. You can lose that kind of the natural flow of a game, like you're kind of saying. I think the other risk is that you could accidentally design the same game as someone else at the same time, which that's always the fear, right? When you start working on a game, you realize someone else is designing the exact same, or not the exact same game, but using that same mechanism, because we're all trying to innovate. We're all getting inspiration from the same kind of places in general from previous games. So there's that fear as well that, oh, someone else is going to do it first, or, yeah.
It's a weird one, and if someone else got there first, like, to some extent, what does it matter? Like, although having said that, Dominion was fairly innovative in that, this whole deck building thing, yes, it uses elements of deck construction, but yeah, imagine if two people had been working on deck building at the same time, how annoyed the other person would be to say, oh, Donald X Vaccarino got there first, and my game was like 90% complete, and I was just getting to the pitching it round to publishers.
Yeah.
Like, that would be so sad.
I think it happens quite a bit, actually. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, so, yeah, it kind of... Does it basically just tie into the whole comfort and not being too bewildered out there? Is that the only danger?
Yeah, I think that's the big one. Is some games they're trying so hard to be different that they can go a bit too far, and they just don't connect with people. I think that's probably just more a thing of not being developed enough or not being tested enough. Because I mean, if you are really testing your games a lot, you'll pick up on that kind of stuff. That you'll notice that certain players just aren't making things click, and that's when it comes to streamlining and making things more intuitive for players. But that's for any game. That's not just about innovation. Yeah, it's hard to think of examples of games that may have missed the mark, but I'm sure there are probably some good examples out there.
And sometimes you don't want to bring down other people's games because it feels a bit curmudgeonly.
Yeah, so much work goes into making games. So yeah.
Cheap Sheep Games asks, what game idea you thought is brilliant, never made it to a prototype? So you've talked about this theory crafting, so you kind of talk through the ideas, or you kind of play it in your head before you even make that first prototype, because you're able to kind of ponder some of the first play issues if you actually play it in your head with enough detail, right?
Yep.
And so have you had something that when you had, oh, that would be a great idea, and then you pondered it a bit more and it never made it to a prototype?
I'll throw one out there that I haven't done yet that someone else might want to do. I threw it out to our design group on Saturday, and they're like, oh, that's a actually cool idea. Like a deck builder crossed with a card drafting game. So everyone builds their own deck, but each round you're going to draft from someone else's deck. So this round we're drafting my cards, and then you'll all discard them into my discard pile. Next round we're all drafting from your cards. So you're kind of tailoring your deck towards what you want to be in the drafts, basically. I haven't designed it, but that's an idea. So just kind of mashing two mechanisms together. Yeah.
So that's a really cool idea. And then so your deck basically gets cannibalized by everyone else, and then you spend like the next round while everyone else's deck is being cannibalized one at a time before it gets to your next thing, turning these terrible discards into something that you can sort of work with.
Well, I imagine you kind of like you build your deck, and then when you draft the cards, everyone plays them, but they go back into your discard pile. So your deck's not getting affected by other players, but you might be building it towards, let's just say it's like a medieval game, because that's what I do. But let's just say like you're going very combat heavy, they're going very trade heavy, they're going more technology. So like when we go to play the round that I'm passing my cards around, it's going to be a very like attack focused game or round or something. So that kind of thing. I don't know how it would work, but if someone wants to run with it, they can run with it.
But there's definitely lots of ways that you could take that, and I think that's one of those things that it's such a vague idea that it's like almost finding the details that make that work. And yeah, it's all about the details. Maya says, what games do you consider most innovative in the last few years?
I'm going to have to do this model spin to the shelf again. Gosh. That's a really hard question. Because I think most of the innovation that I enjoy in games is very subtle. So it's not like they've reinvented something completely different. Games that kind of stand out as like kind of setting like a new tone or a new style, games like Azul. So there's been plenty of abstract games, but when Azul came out, it was very like more accessible, deeper, yet still very simple and rule set. So that's one that stands out a
I
bit
mean,
to
would
me.
you point to the take one color from a pool and then the rest of that pool goes into the
Yeah,
center as
I
the
call
key
that.
clever?
Yeah, I call that definitely innovation, and also
Mm.
the way that you kind of build. You know, you're doing stacks of 1 to 5, and you're bringing those one over and creating these patterns. So I think innovation can be quite easy to spot when it's a simple game, like Love Letter, like I mentioned before. That's so innovative. Like that's one of those games you play. You go, why did I not design this game already? Like it's so elegant and so clever. So 8 different cards. You know, it's just genius.
Yeah, Azul was really nice, and I think getting back to the fact that it is contextual and there's some familiarity with it. I mean, for sure, there is so much new. Like just okay, having to have 1, 2, 3, 4, it goes up to 5, right, on the bottom row.
Yep.
Sorry, yeah, it's 5 by 5 grids, and then the way that things go across, like the scoring mechanism. Sure, there's things that are similar to it that have been seen before, and you can for sure easily draw lines and parallels and say, okay, this inspired that, but it's all had that slight tweak, which is by doing things in a slightly different order, and that's the thing. I think with a small change, you can have such big ramifications.
Yeah, definitely. That's good. Like if you are designing games, that's the good thing to do. Is when you think you've got your game working well, it's good to just try something completely different. Like let's just try swapping out this card drafting for something else. You know, just see what it feels like, and like because that's often that kind of experimentations where these ideas come from. I think for Raiders with the place a worker, pick up a worker, that probably came from me just sitting on my floor with some bits and pieces, staring at like a scribble, going, "What if you did this? What if you did that?" Just like thinking of how can you use these components in a different way, or trying to make a fresh way of drafting actions, really. Because I mean, most board games, that Euros especially, is all about drafting actions in some sense, like with limitations that you can do one of these things, or so it's like, how do you make that fresh? How do you limit their choices but still have good decisions for them to make? Yeah.
I mean, I'd be interested to hear anyone in the audience. What do you think is the most innovative game out there, or your in the past 10 years? Like, let us know. And because we've got to shout for Mystic Vale, I mean, I've already mentioned a couple of Wolfgang Warsch's games. Delving for sure on the lighter side compared to what you do. But I wanted to touch upon the fact that, yeah, some people say you do worker placements, right? But, if we look at the way, it depends on how you define worker placements, right? Like, maybe it's not all about you put a thing here and then you're locking that action for other people. Like, if you look at worker placements in a very narrow sense, you could argue that none of your games are actually worker placements games.
Yeah, they're not really. Raiders is the only one that's really a worker placement, but it's still not a classic worker placement. I guess Architect says, but we call it worker investment because you're kind of sowing actions. And then Paladins is not a worker placement game.
Area majority, kind of.
Yeah, you're sowing workers into spots to kind of boost how good your actions are. So you are placing workers, but it's not really. Yeah, that's a funny thing. I always laugh when I see people call like. So Paladins is, I call it worker drafting action selection, because you're drafting workers and you're selecting your actions. And then Viscounts does not have any worker placement whatsoever, but yet the fact that you put workers in a castle, people are now calling it worker placement.
And
So
Raiders are kind of moving around, and it's almost more similar to, I don't know, like mixture of Carcassonne and Risk compared to Agricola. Do you know what I mean? Like if I had,
Yeah, it's action selection, but it's not worker placement in the true sense of the original mechanism, I suppose.
and so yeah, talking about that, people see something and then they want to fit it into a box.
Yeah,
And
genre,
yeah, for whatever reason, do you think that that's a good starting point when you do it?
As a designer, do you mean, or as a player?
Yeah, as a designer, like, do you ever start off because I know, look, you've said you start off with the setting. Did you ever consider worker placement games? Do you ever like think, okay, this game's a bit worker placement-y, I'm going to make a point of looking at more worker placement games right now? What's your stance on exploring a type of game that you're making?
Not so much. Well, maybe I do. It's hard to say. I probably do actually. Like if I'm going to make a certain kind of game, I probably do subconsciously at least try and play those kind of games. Or I already have played those kind of games. I don't. I don't often set out to make a certain type of game. Viscounts was the one exception where I told Sam I don't like deck building games in general because I don't like how most of the scoring's hidden the whole game, and you suddenly reveal and you realise who's won. I always found them quite anticlimactic. So with Viscounts, the whole thing was let's make a deck building game that we really like. So we definitely set out to make a deck builder, but it's like only like a third of a deck builder now. It's got everything else chucked in with it. But yeah.
And yeah, for sure, when you just mash stuff together. But for when I asked what things people thought were innovative, Xate mentioned Nyctophobia, which I still really want to play. I've not played it. You know this one, the one where you're literally blinded, so you can't see anything, and one person can see other stuff, but like everyone else has these blackout glasses, and so you just need to use your sense of touch, which is really interesting. Someone else said The Crew, which won the Spiel des Jahres, I want to say.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't say it's innovative. It's basically 500 reskin, but yeah.
It's 500 reskins.
Well, it's the New Zealand, how we play 500 in New Zealand, the card game.
Oh, I'm not familiar with 500.
Yeah.
So 500 is a cooperative trick-taking game.
I think it's team-based. I actually never played it. I was talking to Sam about it yesterday. But yeah, I think it's team-based. But it's the way they package it that makes it the whole, it's the whole thing altogether. Like the fact they've put in levels and campaign that you can follow, and like it's a great game. It's really enjoyable. So I call that like a subtle innovation that works well, it's like a revisiting of a mechanism that works well. I guess you'd call it. Yeah.
Like to me, the difference between team-based and a single team, like to go from 2 to 1, that's a massive difference, and it feels like maybe the more you get into a particular thing, the more you get into trick-taking games, potentially the more you might appreciate those subtle innovations. Like for someone who only plays games that take less than half an hour, if they see all of your games and they might not be able to mechanically pick it out from 100 other games, do you know what I mean? Because they're like, well, they're all fairly similar, but then once you actually start playing them, then you appreciate the value of those subtle differences, which I guess gets to the question of how important that those changes need to be. But maybe innovation is presenting something that hasn't been done before, whether it's a repackaging or, you know, a new blend, or yeah, it feels like ideally it wants to be something that hasn't been seen before, at least by the target audience, but ideally at all. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I mean, there's always going to be a varying scale of innovation, I suppose. Like a game where you put on blindfolds, that's starting to break what we know about board games in a way. You know, or games you have to play in the dark, things like that. Like that's going like way out there versus like, oh, let's take trick taking, make it a team game, but that's like very subtle. But yeah, so
And Dina's talking about the game where you made art with see-through cards, which it was Canvas. I don't know if you know that one.
I remember seeing it pop up. It was last year on Kickstarter, I think.
So, oh, Captain Sonar, or maybe it's just Sonar Game as a new way of team playing. And yeah, have you played Captain Sonar?
Yeah, that ruined my brain, that game.
You're not one for fast real-time games then?
Nah, I've played the recent Pandemic, whatever it was called, the time-based one, and I just got too stressed. What's it called, Magic Maze, that stresses me out as well.
So let's get into the ways that we can do this differentiation. You've talked about in other shows about having different coins, having different meeples for each trilogy. I mean, this is purely an aesthetic difference.
Yeah.
Would you say that innovation in artwork can make a game feel fresh?
Yeah, totally. I mean, the first time someone sees a new art style in a board game, it's gonna sell like hotcakes. Probably, if it's just, you know, the first time seeing a Ryan Lockett game, you're like, "Whoa, what is this different style? I've never seen before." Or like, yeah, Micho's artwork and things like that. So artwork's huge. The reason for what I mentioned about the workers and the coins, that's purely for consistency of our brand. That's not trying to innovate between the games at all. That's just so that like I love things like being consistent in design. So like you know, I can imagine like seeing like the final products and, you know, the three of each game in different colors and the branding's all the same and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, obviously, different countries might not all use the same currency unless, you know, they've managed to form some sort of union. You know,
Not back in
maybe
the Middle Ages, yeah.
I was thinking more of the euro, to be honest. Like Germany and, you know, France and, you know, those tiny countries that no one's ever heard of before. But in all seriousness, yeah, it does make sense if you've got yeah, I think back in the day there might have been even variation in coinage from region to region, and in the UK there is differentiation. I actually don't know. Someone tell me, does the euro differ from country to country? Because in the UK it's crazy. You've got £1 notes that are different whether you're in Wales or Scotland or England.
I think it's is it Kenneth Bridges, the Scottish comedian? He talks about that a bit, about like Scottish pounds. Like, I don't want your bastard British money. Yeah. Well, he's gone on about this real Scottish money, you know. So even though it's, you know, it's the same value, but yeah.
Oh, night cheap. So this is yeah, like getting into realms of setting and that sort of theme, but having like a different key mechanism. You saying, okay, I'm going to focus on dice now. I'm going to focus whether it's dice whatever you choose to do with these dice, right? And I'm assuming there are D6 for production reasons, because, you know, it's likely to be. But anyway, the point is, restrictions breed creativity. So is that basically why you're doing that? So you can make sure, okay, I'm going to innovate. I'm going to keep it fresh. It almost feels like I should have just called this whole thing "Keeping It Fresh" with Shem Phillips.
Yeah, I mean the Viking trilogy had a lot of focus on Valkyrie and glory and death, and that was kind of a running theme through those games. In the West Kingdom, we focused a lot on like virtue and corruption and criminals and debts and stuff like that. So we didn't want to do that again. We don't want to just like have more corruption strategies and ways of being good and evil in the next trilogy. So we really took a big hard look at this trilogy, like from a thematic point of view and a story point of view. So a lot of these games are going to focus heavily on science and mathematics, astronomy, and because it was in the I think it's called the Islamic Golden Age, where they had so many breakthroughs in various areas of sciences and maths and physics and all sorts. And there's thing called like the translation movement, where they collected all these books from around the world or scrolls and translated them, and there's just so much cool stuff that we don't see many games about. We see lots of games about camels going through the desert, but not actual like cool stuff that, you know, where did our numbering system come from, things like that. So we're going to focus a lot on that, and so thematically it's going to be quite different from the other games. But then mechanically we thought we need something to make it kind of stand out, and that's why we've gone towards dice. So Sam designed a game called Circadians, I think it was early last year, which was a dice placement game, which, yeah, it's been really well received. So I think that kind of inspired it a little bit. Well, what else can we do with dice, like dice bag builders or dice drafting and different kind of new ways and all sorts of stuff. So we've got a whole list of ideas.
And that's a sci-fi game, kind of, even though you say that sci-fi doesn't resonate quite with you so much.
Yeah, it's sci-fi, yeah. I think for me it's like, how do I go far away from medieval sci-fi? That's like the opposite end of it, you know. So
yeah, that makes sense. Okay, we've got Scott says that countries issue their own coins. There are difference on one side, the same on the other, and they've just checked their spare euro change, so they've got, so it actually tells you where you last visited. Or I guess in France, maybe, you know, some Portuguese coins might enter circulation, because, you know, I wonder if there's anything like, you know, English people not allowing stuff. UK legal tenders are a mess. Yeah, it's true. How you can't use Welsh, Scottish. No, you can use it on the subway machine. You can totally use it on the subway machine. I don't. On a machine, you should be able to use all the legal tender from the other territories, but you can't use it if you're in a market and someone's like, oh, I don't know this, because they're unfamiliar with it. They might not want to accept it. Oh, wait. Apparently, Dina tried and got stuck. Oh. Like, you can definitely use at least some Scottish tender in at least one English machine. Oh, apparently this one had a sticker on it saying, yeah, that is a mess. I'm sorry. On behalf of everyone in the UK. That's just an abomination. Yeah. Anyway, so like we're getting into you being inspired by other people, by Sam McDonald coming in and bringing in these ideas. Like, do you think that's a lot of the West Kingdom being different and feeling different was because that's where Sam joined?
Yeah, definitely. So that was my first foray into co-designing. So the entire West Kingdom's a co-designed effort. Like, it's not. I know a lot of people think. I hear things like, "Oh, the latest game from Shem." I'm like, and Sam, he's not just tag along. He's doing a lot of the work and a lot of the initial concepts and things, and then we develop them together. So architects he brought to me as an original concept, scribbled on a whiteboard using Cosmic Encounter tokens as player pieces, so, and ripped up as a card for buildings. And then we took that and we ran with it, and we had things like virtue and 2 more resources and apprentices and all these extra things we added to the game. And then Paladins we designed from the ground up together as a concept, and then Viscounts was the same again. So, but he's so fresh. He's like, he's been designing games for 3 years, but he's like, I've worked with him for, you know, in a band for 5 years, so I know how creative he is. But he's just loves doing what he's doing, and very smart, intelligent guy as well. So a lot of fun to work with.
So would you say that, we don't need to get into this, but just as a side note, would you say that Sam is a good 50% of design and development of West and South and East?
Yeah, definitely, easy. Yep. So he's me and him are like very much do all the design, all do them together. Then I do all the kind of the product development and graphic design and get all the art sorted and rule books written, all that kind of stuff. The publishing side of things.
So, I mean, from what you said just there, it sounds like Sam has even started doing a wee bit more of it. But either way, it's all about this new perspective coming in. And then, okay, we're going to let's talk a little bit about general tips. Like, how can we keep things fresh? Look, what are the ways that we can keep things fresh? We've talked about restrictions, saying, okay, this is the way I'm going to do it. We've talked about saying, okay, I'm going to use dice. We talked about saying, okay, I'm going to go into this other kingdom where things are different. We've talked about bringing on other people. And for me, that's like a big reason why I have like this whole design contest with the L deck where, you know, there's amazing people. Like I can cite you know, Xate, who made a game that, like, I don't want to list all the amazing people. Sorry. Alan, I meant to thank Alan more often, apparently. So well done, Alan. That it was genuinely, that was not it was not a, it was a very badly, it had a lot of work to do, but there were some interesting ideas there, and just kind of playing that, it's like someone's doing something really fresh. You know, sometimes it doesn't work, but, you know, having these fresh ideas and bringing them from someone else, it's like, I would not have thought of that. Like,
Yeah.
do you, like, and for me, it's like kind of almost like crowdsourcing those initial ideas, and yeah, what actually has the legs to do it well. Yeah. And so what other tips would you give to people?
Well, that kind of is a really good one, is that co-designing is a great way to keep it fresh, because for more than one reason too. One reason is that we've got different experiences, so that if he brings this idea, I go, oh, that's just like that game that you haven't played, you know. But also because the thing with me and Sam is he loves adding stuff into games. I love streamlining games. So we have this constant tension of like he's trying to put things in, I'm trying to pull things out. So, but that helps us to try and keep things innovative in a way, because we're constantly challenging each other to make a better game. Like we both go into that with our same purpose, our same attitude, is to make a really great game. So any disagreements that we have, we usually rationalize and realize why it should be this way, because it's going to create a better game. Yeah, I don't know. Other ways of innovation, that's a tough question. I think just find if you're lacking innovation, maybe try and find some fresh inspiration outside of board games. Could be podcasts, could be books, movies. I don't know, but yeah, it's quite easy as a designer to get wrapped up in the board game community and just that's all you kind of get. But get inspiration outside of board games could be a good option as well. I love TV shows personally, like crime shows, sci-fi shows, and stuff like that. Love watching them.
And I think this is, you know, we've got like three really solid things to keep in mind. We've got like restrictions, which kind of, it's all like about your vantage points, really. It's all about different people have different vantage points. Restrictions, they shake you up. So you have to work from a different vantage point. You can't just travel the same path. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you talked about inspiration, like kind of all the books that you read, like these TV shows, and even just walking around and chatting to people and going out dancing, which, oh my gosh, I really miss dancing with other people. But anyway, like, yeah, like trying a new sport or trying a new hobby or doing something, and it's like maybe that gives you a new vantage point. It's like it gives you something. It's like about what do you have in you, what are you trying to do, and like how are you allowed to do it. And yeah, if someone else is there, then yeah, someone else says, Maya says, playing a bunch of different games can at the same time make you more innovative. Oh, this has not been done in any of the other games, but can at the same time put you more in the box. Because I know that Reiner Knizia is very big on saying, okay, I don't play other people's games, but other people are far more on the, just play lots of games and, just, if anything, make sure that you don't do what these other games are doing. Or if I read, Building Blocks of Game Design by Jeff Engelstein and Isaac Shalev, it doesn't mean, okay, use one of these things and then mix it with a second one of these things and hey presto, that's your game. You've got to still, that's like your building block. That's where you start from. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the thing with playing games, often you can get inspired by something that's actually not in the game, but you see something done and that goes, hang on, what if that was done like that? So I think playing games can bring inspiration without copying at all. So I remember playing Asara a long time ago. Really like that game. I think it's Wolfgang Kramer, I think. But it's basically worker placement but with cards, and the color card you play determines what that action space is now colored for all the other players. Really good game. And I always thought I'd love to do a game like that with colored workers that do actions. And then 2 years ago, here comes Underwater Cities, which does exactly what I was thinking in my brain that it could do. So I'm not sure if that was inspired by Asara, but I can definitely see like playing a game like Asara and going, oh, actually, that makes me think of this kind of idea. And it's not copying the game at all, but it's kind of been inspired by it. It's like the next step, which I think is good. We want to keep making games that get better and better as well.
It's about having that inspiration, and even like within other forms of games, within, I don't know, role-playing games or story games, like if you play a lot of heavy Euro games, maybe you can take one of those little mechanisms and put it into a party game. That could be like, you'd probably have to change it quite a bit, but maybe something in there inspires you to do something in this quick set collection game that takes like 10 minutes, where it's like, okay, let's just work on this one game. Or alternatively, maybe this one aspect of a party game inspires you to use it as one aspect of a much bigger game. And at what point what point does inspiration become copying? There's no hard line, is there?
Yeah, I can definitely think of examples of games that are out there that do feel like copies. But yeah, I think we got to remember that mechanisms are just like tools in your toolbox. Like a mechanism's not a game, or unless it's like Dominion where the whole game is one mechanism. But like generally speaking, mechanisms are just little parts that you can plug into a game, little levers that can be pulled in the game. And most games have multiple mechanisms, even if you don't recognize, even Dominion. But yeah, they're just tools that you can use. Yeah.
And there's definitely some specificity to the cards. Some rules upon those cards that actually impact the game quite a bit. Yeah. If you played Dominion and then you played Dominion Intrigue, and then it's almost like, okay, if these two games had come from different designers, would that have been okay? Like, I would personally no. Like, I feel awkward. Like, but then, if
that's a bit different when you're working on like expansions, because you're building upon what you've already designed and what you've already kind of built upon. Yeah, so it's a bit different. But yeah, if it was two different designers releasing a very similar game, then that would. I mean, it happens quite a bit where there's parallel games being designed, even just in the way they look. I'm trying to think what it was. Can't remember. There's two games that came out about 3 years ago, I remember, and one just kind of made the other one disappear because it was so far superior. The other game wasn't a bad game, but the other game was so much better. in the final production. But it was the same. I think it was the same kind of theme and same kind of general feel. So that's just kind of rough for the designers, really.
So, in terms of getting back to the tips of how can we make things that are different from what we have already made, like ourselves, like, I guess the things are change your goalpost, if you know what I mean. Like whether that's giving yourself a restriction, change your approach, whether that's giving your having new people involved maybe, or maybe it's a restriction in your approach. I guess maybe a restriction that doesn't come through in the final game, but it's some sort of meta rule that no one will notice. Like, okay, in this game I'm not going to I'm struggling to think of an example now. That
Like a game like, say, like Aeon's End, where it's like you never shuffle your deck. A little rule like that. So I want to make a deck builder that you never shuffle, and just that's a rule that's always there, and the game develops around it. Things like that. I think that's what you're kind of getting at.
I mean, I was thinking more, like that's kind of changing the goal, though, isn't it? I was thinking of actually something that is in your approach. Like, let's say if you said, okay, actually, here's a perfect example. I'm going to playtest this game several times, but I'm only going to playtest it using Zoom or other kinds of camera, broadcasting services. I'm not going to playtest it with people around the same table. Now, that's going to result, even if you weren't changing the goalposts, well, now you can't take cards from other people. You can't pass cards around the table. You have to have some degree of multiplayer solitaire for sure. And so it's by changing the approach. Or maybe say, okay, as part of this approach, I'm going to test it a lot in pubs. Or, maybe that changes the kind of game that you end up making. And then I guess there's changing your starting point, which is changing the people, changing your inspiration, which changes you as a person, even maybe giving it a bit of time. Saying, okay, I've made so many games, like I've made a whole bunch of speed, dexterity games that involve doing something with cards and recognizing something. Okay, I'm either going to do lots of research and maybe that, or look at other things and maybe that will give me some ideas. Maybe I'll try and brainstorm things. Maybe I'll look at it in a more, okay, what's been done, and is there any missing bits on this box? That's like, if you build up like a multi-dimensional grid of the possibilities, if you start looking at it in that kind of cold calculating way, maybe you can end up with something that's still worthwhile. Do you know what I mean?
That's definitely the approach that most marketing companies will do when they're making a product, is like, where's the hole in the market? Like, what hasn't been done? What's a need, or what do people want in the game that hasn't been done before? Yeah.
Not quite meaning in terms of the market, but in terms of what has been done in terms of the game design, including all the games, even if they flew under the radar. Yeah. What hasn't? And I guess it is kind of designing like a marketer, which, I mean, some people, I don't want this to have a negative connotation because this still has some value. You're still saying, okay, how can we make something that people are going to enjoy?
And I being a publisher as well, I very much have that hat on when designing. So, for example, for our games in these trilogies, I want them to have a very different table presence visually. So Architects has a big 6-fold board, Paladins has a very long board with player boards, and then Viscounts is like a 10-sided rondel-looking map. And that's like a very important and very intentional design choice to make sure they look different on the table. That's to help them stand apart. But that's also something you can bring into trying to be innovative. Bring that in as like, well, how can I make this game look different? Like, because some games end up looking very much the same, like a very beige-looking map of Europe with some small cards and some bits. So how can you make that look better? How can you change, like, how can I do it without a board? How can I do it without cards? Or, there's a lot of things you can think about from how it visually looks, not just how it plays.
And someone's giving a little bits of hearts for Bezier.
We all do. We all do. We're just not brave enough to admit it.
Now, I'm going to close it off to. I'm not going to start any more tangents after the next couple of minutes. We have to start winding down, which is a step before wrapping up. So we wind down and then we wrap up. So Jeroen asks, when do you think an expansion should be a new game rather than an expansion?
When it's a new game, I guess. That's a good question. That's a good question. I personally think the expansions should just add subtle things to a game. So if the box needs to be as big as the original box, then it's probably a new game. Yeah. I don't usually design games with the intention of making expansions.
Like you've got like promo cards and things like that.
Yep.
Like that's an easy thing to fit on, but then if you say, okay, here, and you've got, obviously you've designed games with the thought of adding on a player via an expansion.
Not usually. We did.
I thought you had that one game that you said was best at 5 to 6 players.
Architects, yes. So Architects, that's the one we thought this will most likely get an expansion that has a 6th player. So we intentionally put 5+ on the board, even though the expansion ended up adding a board over that board, but still. So that was like more like future proofing more than anything. We may go to 6, so let's put 5+ rather than just 5 on the board for the player count. But yeah, we don't design expansions before the games are released, but you kind of have that thought like maybe there may be an expansion, but yeah.
I mean, it's a weird one because Dina mentions Dominion, which has huge boxes for each expansion. And like, but then there are standalone expansions, and like I think Dead of Winter, A Long Night. I can't remember.
Yeah, they got it. Yeah.
Like sometimes the box size is to drive a price point. That's true. And so I think that's kind of us.
I suppose a good case for it would be like the Pandemic series, because you got like Iberia and High Tide and stuff. Like, are they just expansions made into base games, or are they new games? So,
I mean, they can't be combined. So I would say that Iberia is not an expansion, because if you've got a standalone expansion, then you need to be able to combine it. I mean, I'm actually like. They could have
taken the ideas from Iberia, like the rail kind of engine building aspect of it, and put that on Pandemic as an expansion. But I guess they go, hang on, that's better to make an actual game because it's far enough changed. So, but again, that's just a publisher decision more than anything, probably.
Like this feels like a whole separate topic that could deserve its own show, because it's like. Yeah, with Yogi Guru, I still consider Guru as the expansion, even though you can buy it and play it on its own, because for me, the sequel has, I just called it the sequel rather than an expansion. It's kind of ramping up the complexity. So it's like, I don't want people to start there. I would like people to start with the green box, and if they like it, go to the orange box. And to my mind, I had to do a bit of work to make sure that if you play it on its own, it's not going to be atrocious. But the intention, like in my mind, the ultimate way to play this is to mix the two. And maybe that's it. It's like all about intent. Because like if I did Yogi Jr. like had kind of, they'd be mixable, but obviously this is completely different from the kinds of games that you do. But that would be like, okay, a standalone game that I don't expect people to mix in with the original, because it's a junior thing, because I'm saying that, hey, this is for 5-year-olds, because maybe a 4 or a 5-year-old isn't quite able to do all the cards of the adult version, because a lot of kids, I don't know if you know this, a lot of kids cannot wink. True story.
Yeah.
But anyway, there's all sorts of reasons, and I wanted to make sure that we get to those questions that I put on the description. So where does inspiration come from? Yeah, we've kind of already touched upon it, but if you could just give a quick recap.
Yeah, so my main inspiration is probably from playing other games, and I'd say probably just talking with other designers as well. Got a lot like with Sam and with other local friends like Bobby Hill and Jarrett Gray, who designed Endeavour with Carl. Just kind of talking with designers is great. It's like, and yeah, as far as other creative things, I love music, playing it and writing it and listening to it, and love watching kind of like the sci-fi crime type TV shows, episodic kind of shows. Yeah.
And how many ideas are just instantly discarded and being like, yeah, that's too derivative or that's not good enough?
If they are, they're probably straight away. Just like, what about this? No, it's done. And it's gone. But I do. But I think both Sam and I both keep like a Google document of just random ideas. So if we're ever looking for inspiration, might just read through the old ideas and see what there is. Yeah.
Moving back, Dina says that muscular control of singular eyes is at approximately 8 years before they can do it. Yeah, so well done to me for Innerbind Jr., which I think Dina has Innerbind Jr. So, yeah, and even some adults apparently can only wink on one of their eyes. So we talked about making sure our games are distinctive from existing stuff and each other. I think we've already covered that fairly nicely. How can we avoid making derivative stuff? And why does this even matter?
Yeah, that's a good question, that one. Why does it matter? I think that comes down to like the designer themselves, and I guess it sounds funny saying it, but their own convictions on like what it means to make a game, I suppose. Like if you're comfortable kind of making a very similar game over and over again, that's fine. Like if you're comfortable doing that, then that's great. Some designers do that. I mean, you could say there's sort of two branches. You've got designers, I guess, that do a very similar game, and people might say this of me, I guess, with our brand, but even though games are different, they might see them as the same kind of thing being reinvented. Then you've got like Vlada Shabatel, who does like anything from like Mage Knight to Codenames, from very different games. So kind of got two different types of designers, maybe, and probably in the middle.
Yeah,
So it's
and
kind of
like
been,
Knizia has like these periods where they do, okay, all the auction games, okay,
Yeah,
all
yeah,
of
yeah.
these games, and like so many of their games, sure, they might not be necessarily copying other people's things, but then you've got, some Knizia games that's, hey, isn't that like basically exactly like what you yourself did publish kind of a few years ago? It
yeah. I
feels
think
a bit.
So I think sometimes when you've been designing, he's been designing games for how many decades?
Oh yeah,
Sometimes
and
you want to go
Knizia
back
makes
and
like 60 games a year, like phenomenal. Like more games in 1 year than most of us would make in our entire career.
yeah. So he probably wants to go back and revisit some of those concepts that he enjoyed designing, and then wants to give them a new twist or something. So I think that's totally just part of being a designer,
And
enjoying the
then
process.
are you familiar with Serlin and the Flashpoint dual kind of controversy?
Nah.
Basically, Dave Serlin's a big proponent of saying, hey, there's this game that I like. I'm going to take like this one thing. So Knizia made this game where you're kind of playing cards, you're moving along a one-dimensional line, and then if you get onto the other person, then they lose a hit point. And then Dave Serlin took those basically same rules, made some really small tweaks, but then added a whole bunch of asymmetric characters, and everyone who basically played it says, yeah, this is very much a big evolution of that previous game. But then there was a bit of a fuss, and some people are saying, yeah, this is a bit too close for comfort. And yeah, you kind of, it feels certainly legally there's no issue with it, but it kind of comes down to ethically, like,
Yeah, it's a personal thing of the designer, I think. If you're comfortable, like you got Machikoro, you know, which like has a lot of flaws, but it was very innovative of itself. But then you've got like Valeria Card Kingdoms and Space Base, and I think there's other ones too, which took that concept and made it way better. So, you know, if that's totally okay, if that you're comfortable doing that, I suppose. I'm not sure. I personally don't want to be known for copying games, but that's just me personally. I probably do to an extent, like, you know, even subconsciously.
Like
But,
everyone copies, it's just like maybe the bits that we copy are smaller and from more diverse sources.
Less
But then there's
recognizable.
also something to be said for building up on the people who came before you.
Yep.
And
Give credit.
like
I guess give credit where credit's due, I suppose, you know. So
someone yesterday said, make the kind of art that you want to see in the world, and that's kind of what it comes down to. If you think, within one section, I think, is refinement equally valid, would you say?
yeah, I think so. I mean, you could almost argue that refinement gets to a point that it becomes innovation, I guess, maybe. You know.
Now, just to recap everything else, because we've covered so much, we talked about Calico Keep, we talked about you know, waking up super early and not having that much sleep and being quite a lot more organized than I am, about family and working with your family and honoring your family, and about music and the importance of that. We talked about balance, about the balance of familiarity and novelty, about how it all ties into the personal experience of not only the designer, but the person who's the audience. And we talked about you know, it's a talking point, it's a focus for the designer. If it's like, okay, this is what the game's all about, it's a hook, helps it sell well, it separates it from not only what you've previously done, but also everything else on the market. We talked about the drafting of Azul, we talked about lots of other games, we talked about consistency, we talked about having restrictions, new opinions with working with other people, we talked about having new inspiration, we talked about putting a limitation on maybe the way you test, which, yeah, it's a weird one. We talked about enjoying music and science fiction, and yeah, that's basically what we said. And that, let's finish up with this one question. As a starting point, which game would you recommend? This is the best one to start off with for someone who already plays a lot of heavy Euro games.
I think if you don't like a lot of direct interaction, probably Paladins. If you want a bit more interaction between players, I'd say Viscounts, which is coming out in about 3 or 4 weeks. They're our heaviest ones.
So it's like your games are, West is definitely a bit heavier than North.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Definitely heavier. You can blame Sam McDonald for that.
Or thanks, Sam McDonald, depending on your perspective. So if you want to find me, I am stuffbybez.com, stuffbez.bigcards.com to buy some of my stuff, twitter.com/stuffbez where I share the most, instagram.com/stuffbez for pictures. I'm trying to get that up to daily, thanks to input from Dina. Twitch.tv/stuffbez where it's streaming every day at 10 a.m. UK time. Facebook.com/thingsbybez is a thing, and stuffbez@gmail.com is my email address if you wish to get in touch with me that way. And I'm just going to paste your links, which are also available on YouTube. And where do you most like to be found?
You can find me usually on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. I think it's always just at Garphill Games. So easy to find.
So that was that. I want to say thank you, everyone. And thank you, everyone who's kind of been joining in along the way, chatting. It's lovely to kind of hear your inputs and have your questions. Thank you to everyone who popped in, even if you're not here. Thank you to my amazing moderators. I'm not going to name anyone by name today, except for one person who is Shem Phillips. Thank you for joining me for this longer episode. I mean, we're basically always hitting up to the 2 hour mark. Once I said like 2 hours is the limit, we always basically get to 150. But yeah, thank you everyone. And yeah, we've got other people joined that. Xate says they're waiting for a guest that says find me on Tinder. And yeah, oh no, shoot, we've got about 2 minutes. I want to say over to you. What are you up to? Share something, only if you want to. So everyone in the comments, what are you up to? Share whatever. Hopes, ambitions, exciting, trivial, important, or just fun. Is there something that you're looking forward to? I am going to... my hope is to do a serious dent in tidying my room. I really need some more organization in my life. I'm really bad at this, but I'm hoping to start that off today. Just started for a couple of hours. And I'm also looking forward to seeing Chris and McCall tonight. We are going to play some games in real life with Chris and McCall, two of my favorite people. And so, yes, what are you up to? What do you want to share? Shem.
Oh, me. Sorry, I thought you were waiting for the audience. Oh, what am I up to? Gosh, I've got my little list in front of me. I'm going to a awards ceremony next Thursday night for a business award for a local thing. So I got nominated for a local. Yeah, so I don't expect to win, but I have to buy a suit. I don't wear suits, but I'm going to buy a suit this week. So that's my big plan for the week.
And Wotan Games is doing a German translation of Brexit the Real Deal game. Apparently we've got a sneak preview of what that email is. Sorry, spoilers. It was fun there and here in chat. Oh, Lawrence is maybe looking forward to the goodbye song. And I'm looking also forward to 17th of October. There's a Bez and Friends game day. 1 p.m. we start playing games in Discord. We're starting off with How Much Money. I am starting off here at 12:30, and then we carry on basically all day until 6 p.m. UK time, which is not really all day. It's kind of until the end of the afternoon UK time, which is terrible for you, if you are in New Zealand. I'm sorry. For my next streams, look at stuffbez.com/streams. Tomorrow I'm with Emma. We're going to be having a very light-hearted chat. We will be saying almost nothing of substance, but it will be hopefully fun to engage in. Share, spread the word if you like that. And yeah. Oh, Dina has ice cream today. They are looking forward to that. I'm just quickly checking to see if any of my favorite people are doing a thing. Okay, and there is only one thing left to do, which is going to be to say Maya's looking forward to playtesting, and one thing left to do is to say bye 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 bye. This is the goodbye song. Bye 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye 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 bye. And now it's time to go. Bye 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 bye. This is a goodbye song. Bye 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 bye. Thank you for watching along. Bye 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 bye. This is the end of the show. Bye 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 bye. And now it's time to
go to sleep for me. Yeah.
Go in whatever manner you want. Bye bye.
Bye.